This podcast is sponsored by nobody. Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I will be welcoming the dynamic Patrick Stack. Patrick is Timothy Stack's brother. He's also Nathan Lane's former comedy partner. He's a former groundling. He played Lieutenant Morgan in Sylvester Stallone's first Rambo movie, First Blood, celebrating its 40th anniversary. He's also in the movie Crime Wave. He was in FX, guest starred on a lot of different TV series like Hunter and Greatest American Hero. And he's also a producer of shorts and independent films and so forth, and documentaries. And we're going to talk about all of that stuff today. I love talking to people who are in the Groundlings. That's awesome. Get to see, what we get to see, his perspective of what went on during that time. And I'm sad to say, rest in peace, Sally Kellerman. She was such a gorgeous, funny, talented lady and a huge part of my childhood. Loved her in Moving Violations, Back to School, MASH. She was the voice of Miss Finch in Follow That Bird, the Sesame Street movie. And she just did so much great work. She played Mark Maron's mother on his sitcom. It's a sad, sad loss. Rest in peace, Sally Kellerman. So yeah, here is my interview with Patrick Stack. Hey Patrick, welcome to the show, sir. How are you today?
Tommy, it's really good to speak with you. I'm doing great, thank you.
Oh, likewise, sir. My pleasure. This is such a great honor.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time today.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't know what kind of honor it is, but I appreciate you taking the time and inviting me to come on board.
My pleasure, sir. So, going back in time, I know that you come from a showbiz family. Your brother is Tim Stack. Your mother, Joan, was a talk radio host. So, I can imagine you started gravitating toward acting and performing early on in your childhood.
Well, that's true, but it's certainly not any kind of professional acting. It was stuff we liked to do in the neighborhood, and I was in a couple of bands growing up in high school and actually continued that into adulthood, but I didn't really think of acting as a professional pursuit until my freshman year in college. I was floundering a bit. I had gone to school in small school in Ohio, ostensibly to play football and to stay out of Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And I was floundering a little bit, not really knowing what I wanted to do, and didn't really like where I was. And my mother suggested I take an acting class. She said, "You always like to do that. That was always fun. You like to perform, blah, 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 blah." And I took an acting class, and the professor was very encouraging and really talked to me in a way that it hadn't occurred to me.
Yeah.
This might be something that I'd want to actually pursue as a livelihood. It just didn't, and kind of the light bulb went off, and that's when I decided to try to have a career in showbiz.
Yeah. So you played bands in high school. What kind of music did you play?
Rock and roll, baby. I grew up in the 50s and the 60s, so that's what it was, and that continued well into adulthood, where we would do bands that we had a couple of different bands, and we typically would play 60s and late 50s, early 70s cover songs. So
Nice.
it was a lot of fun. Yeah, a lot of fun.
The Beatles, Rolling Stones, stuff like that.
Well, not even more kind of more some rockabilly stuff and more some pop stuff, but things that were easy to play and easy to sing. I was the lead singer, so it couldn't be too difficult musically.
Lead singer. Did you play guitar at all?
No. I play a little now, but no. I was the lead singer. Reno Royale was my stage name.
It was.
So if you go onto YouTube,
mm-hmm.
actually look at there's some stuff up there on YouTube of things we did. I think the last show we did was in Philadelphia in 2015.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up. Leo Royale, you said?
Reno, R-E-N-O,
Reno.
R-O-Y-A-L-E, Reno Royale.
Reno Royale. Okay, I'll look that up later.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. It might be that. Yeah. So, I mean, that was my name. The name of the band we were the Flesh Poles.
Yeah. Did you guys play like your school prom and stuff?
No, none of that then. This was all stuff. I was in a band in junior high school where we did folk music, and no, this wasn't until after I had gotten out. Actually, we did it in college, but basically in New York. Hooked up with guys in New York, where I went after college.
Yeah, so you were originally on the trajectory in music, but then you just fell into acting.
The music really wasn't because I enjoyed music, but it was an opportunity to perform. So that's what I liked, the performance angle of it. That's why I was the lead singer rather than I couldn't really play an instrument, but I liked to perform. So to me, it was an extension of acting in a way. I adopt a persona when I do that stuff. So
yeah. So how do you meet Nathan Lane?
Nathan Lane and I met in a show in 1976, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 76. At a theater that's next to the Promenade Theater, which is at 76th and Broadway in New York, and there was a show called What's New.
Uh-huh.
And we were cast in this show that was similar maybe to Saturday Night Live meets 60 Minutes, if that makes sense. It was comedy, it was music, but each week the show changed based on current events. And we made each other laugh, and there were two other people in the cast that were working. They had a comedy act, and they were making money on weekends doing stand-up.
Yeah.
And we decided that that's what we ought to do because we were broke, didn't have any money, and that's how that began. We started writing some material for people, and then we saw a sign. There was a club or a restaurant in Soho, and they were offering, if you brought an audience, you could perform. So we went down there, we signed up, and they said, okay, you got a slot in 3 weeks. So in 3 weeks, we had to write 45 minutes of material. It was called Boltex, was the name of the club.
Okay.
And that was our first gig. So that was in 76. So that's how we met, and then kind of went from there, continued to grow and do more gigs, and started to come out. We signed with William Morris in New York, and then started to come out to New York, to LA, and did all the talk shows. And we opened for the big acts that William Morris had on the road, and had a development deal with Paramount, but that didn't really work out. Nathan actually got a job doing a show back in New York, so with Dana Carvey and Mickey Rooney.
Oh, wow.
So that kind of put the comedy team on hold. But we're still friends. We had dinner the other night. We're going to see each other again on Sunday, and so that's been a nice relationship throughout the years.
Yeah, that is awesome. That is really cool. Did you guys play all the New York comedy clubs?
We did. Actually, at the time, the Playboy clubs. That was a big part of the circuit. We did those, and we did again. We would open for. We did those on our own, but then we would be the opening act for groups like Al Jarreau, Air Supply, Michael Frank, The Letterman, those may or may not be familiar to you, but they were all acts that had hit records at one time, and they still went out and performed. And Eddie Rabbitt was another.
Eddie Rabbitt, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Were you guys?
So that's. Go ahead.
Oh, were you guys the only comedy team that was around at the time, or was the Funny Boys around?
Yeah, I think the Funny Boys were around. What are their names?
Jonathan Schmock and Jim Vallely.
Yeah, I think they were around, and I think there was another comedy team. Oh, there was another guy. I ran into him, Sullivan and somebody. There were a number of comedy teams, a couple of them, but there were also a lot of individuals. So we wanted to get exposure. That's what we wanted, and we thought this would be a good way to kind of rise above it, and it worked. It did what actually it did. We got to sign with William Morris. We got a manager out in L.A. and all of that worked. And we got a development deal with Paramount Television. So that's what we tried to do. And at the time, there were a lot of stand-ups who were getting TV deals. Freddie Prinze, guys like Seinfeld and Larry David.
Right.
It came afterwards. But it was a good time for comedians to start to get recognized and seen by Hollywood, specifically for television. And that's what we were interested in.
Yeah, the moment that Johnny Carson moved from New York to L.A., it changed the whole comedy scene at that time.
Yeah, I think you're right. There were a lot of clubs in New York. I think there were more clubs. They felt like there were more clubs in New York than in L.A. at the time. I mean, there was the Improv. I don't think the Laugh Factory was there yet, but it was basically the Improv and the Comedy Store. And I think there were a couple other clubs as well, but those were the big places to have showcases. I mean,
yeah,
our agents put on a showcase for us at the Comedy Store, and that went really well for us. That gave us a lot of exposure in Los Angeles, because we had just come out from New York, July of 1980, and nobody knew us in L.A.
Yeah,
that was a good industry thing for us. So.
Yeah, did you guys play the Comedy Store?
Oh yeah, that was we played the Comedy Store more than the Improv.
Mm-hmm.
It was very interesting that we did our style of comedy was not, hey, where are you from? How long you been married?
Yeah.
That's a great sweater. We would do characters. We did sketches. We did little funny bits involving two people. That was our act. And so the rhythm of a room was very, very important. When we were in New York, we kind of owned this club called the Kovac, and it was at 48th and 8th Avenue, and it was a piano bar, but you get 100 and some people, 150 people in there. But the rhythm of that room allowed us to go in, and typically we would do a 45-minute set, which is, you don't do that in places like the Improv or the Comedy Store or the Laugh Factory, unless you're a headliner. So the Improv was very much stand-up comedy in that rhythm, and it didn't work as well for us because we did, as I said, more two guys going to a singles bar, that kind of stuff. So the Comedy Store was a little bit better for us, especially in the main room, which was a bigger room, bigger stage. We used to follow the Comedy Store players,
right,
which included people like Marty Short, Robin Williams. Who else was in that? But Andrea Martin was in it.
I think Carol White and Lynn Stewart.
Who?
Carol White and Lynn Stewart.
I don't know if Lynn was in. Lynn was in the Groundling. I was, in the Groundlings there, but I don't know if Lynn was in the Comedy Store Plus. She might have been. I just remember those people, and it was, like I said, it was better rhythm for us in those rooms. So.
Yeah, did Mitzi like you guys?
Well, yeah, we used to get on. We got slots, but sometimes we would play the comedy, the room, with the stand-up room. But yeah, we got slots. But it was tough. It wasn't necessarily. We certainly weren't headlining and things like that. But like I said, we seem to get more work, or at least more slots there than we did at the Improv. What the heck's his first name? Why am I missing it?
Oh, Bud.
Butch, that's not it.
Bud Friedman.
What is it? Silverman. Who?
Bud Friedman.
Bud Friedman.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Silver, we knew Silver from New York, his ex-wife, who she would put us on all the time at the Improv in New York. But when we came out, Bud was kind of running the show, and his, what was his second in command there? I remember, could see his face, I can't remember his name.
I don't know.
Good guy. But he used to kind of book a lot of the acts too. But, yeah.
So after you two break...
It was a good time.
Yeah, it was a magical time for comedy too. Anything went.
Yeah.
But after you two broke up, is that when you went to go to the Groundlings?
Yeah, Nathan came back to New York because he got this show with NBC, as I said, Mickey Rooney and Dana Carvey, and LA was better for me. LA was just a better place for me, I felt, for my talent, and there was more work for me. I didn't go into the Groundlings right away because Tim was in the Groundlings, and I didn't want to pull a Jim Belushi. So I waited until Tim left the Groundlings, and then I went into the Groundlings after that. But Tim was there, I think, early 80s to 85 or 6, and I went in after that.
Yeah, who was there when you were there?
Well, people that have gone on to Providence, Lisa Kudrow.
Yeah.
Kathy Griffin.
Yeah.
But Lovitz had left, Hartman had left, Pee Wee had left.
Yeah.
Tim had left. People like Phyllis Katz and.
I love Phyllis.
And a lot. She's doing a show of mine now, which I'm very grateful for. I produced a show called The Hollywood Stories, and the next show is April 18th at the Groundling Theater, and
nice.
Phyllis is one of my performers.
Nice. Yeah, I've talked to Mindy Sterling and Steve Hibbert and
Sure.
people like that was at the Groundlings at that period, and I've talked to all the old guys as well. Yeah, they're all good people there.
Not to name drop, but I was an altar boy with Steve Hibbert, and I'm so bad with names, I apologize. Julia
Sweeney.
What's Julia's name? Sweeney.
Yeah.
Gee whiz, this is crazy. I should have done my homework before getting on with you. They got married, and they needed an altar boy. And I was an altar boy at about age 35 or whatever it was. So, yeah, they were all really swell people back then, and the Groundlings still are. I mean, it's still a wonderful institution, and it's just given people just a great foothold. And like they always say, even if you don't want to do it professionally, just to take a beginning class, I don't know what it's like if you can get in there now, but it used to be, if you could write a check, you could get in the beginning class. That was open to everybody. And it was just, you'd go for a class and you would laugh for an hour and a half or 2 hours. It was just great fun.
Yeah, from what I've been told, it's a lot harder now than it used to be. It's the hardest it's ever been. I think when... Yeah, I think when the founders of something give power to other people, who weren't, part of the founding system, the system changes, and it can be pretty toxic, at times. But, I guess, with the progression of time, things change.
Yeah, I mean, I also think things have changed because it became so immensely popular and well known because of all the people that went on to Saturday Night Live. And when you put that kind of light, that flashlight on something like that, then people come out of the woodwork to be part of that.
Right.
So
the standards get higher.
Inevitably, it's gonna change just by the fact that probably so many people want to get in, so many talented people want to get in, and how do you make a decision as to who gets into Sunday company and who gets into the main company? It's a hard one. It's a hard one.
Yeah, absolutely. So your first on-screen TV credit on IMDb listed was The Greatest American Hero.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that was pretty exciting to get that job. That was a lot of fun.
The circus episode.
Had a breakthrough there, and it was a good. Those people were very nice to me, and Connie Selica and Culp and Billy, and it was fun. It was great. It was great fun. But I had done some commercials before then. I'm pretty sure commercial work was a good way to kind of keep the rent being paid. That was good stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, Bill Catt. Bill Catt's a great guy. I've met him. He's an absolute mensch, I'll tell you.
Yep. Yeah.
What kind of things did you endorse in commercials?
Oh, wow. I was fortunate enough to do a bunch of them, of Ford trucks, Chevy trucks. I mean, it's pretty funny how you, I'll tell you an interesting story. Do we have time, Tommy?
Oh, absolutely. Go right ahead.
For me to go down memory lane?
Yeah. Go right ahead.
I did a commercial for Avis Rent-A-Cars. And there were two other principals in the commercial. And one is, there was a woman who lost touch with her, but the other guy became a good friend of mine, D. David Morin. Mm-hmm. And D. Dave, at the time, he was the commercial king.
Yeah.
He would book, what happens in the commercial world is you book a commercial for, say, automobiles. You basically are booked out of that category. You can't do any other commercials for a truck company or a car company. The same holds true for beer, financial services, cereal. These categories, you get kind of locked out of them. It's not a bad thing because it means that you're working and you probably have a pretty good contract for that product in that category. So D. Dave was a guy who worked all the time. Anyway, we met on this commercial, the Savers commercial, and became very friendly. And I can't remember the year, but we did this commercial, and then my agent called up and said, you know what, they want to use you guys again for a newer model Cadillac, because that's what Avis would rent for the business people, Cadillacs. So we got this great trip to fly down, first class, of course, to Miami, and we were down there for 3 or 4 days doing a couple of little bits for Avis, but in a newer model Cadillac. Great job. Great job. Got paid great, and my buddy Mike Talbot, who was on Miami Vice at the time, he was there, so I got to meet him as well. He was living in Coconut Grove, so it was a great job. Great job.
Nice.
So, I could tell you, this is 1989, I guess, because I had decided I wanted to get married and have a family, and the acting thing was just too up and down for me. I was kind of discouraged by it and wanted to see if there was something else out there.
Right.
So I took a job with a company called Advertising Age magazine, selling advertising. And I had just started working there, and it was January of 1990, and I got a call from my agent saying, "Hey, they want to use the Avis commercial or parts of it with you in the Cadillac for a Cadillac commercial. So they're going to renegotiate, and I'll let you know if they come back." I said, That's great. That's just found money, easy money. We don't do anything new. They just take a clip from the Avis commercial and put it into a Cadillac commercial. So a week later, my agent calls back and said, they decided not to do it. I said, okay, fine, no worries. Well, about a week after that, I had a conversation with my buddy, D. David, who was in the commercial. And he said, hey, that's pretty cool that we get to do, we don't even have to work, but we get money for doing the Cadillac thing. I said, well, what do you mean? They told me that I wasn't cast in it. They weren't going to do it. He said, no, we negotiated, to do it. So it occurred to me that they hired D. David. They assumed D. David was driving the car, and they needed a driver, and he was the big commercial actor. And they must have thought that I was the guy who was sitting in the back of the car in this commercial. But in fact, in the commercial, that was D. David. So what I realized was they had made a deal with D. Dave, but thinking that they should have made it with me because I was the guy driving the car. Well, Cadillac was the big sponsor for the Masters golf tournament. And I knew that the Cadillac spot was going to be the first spot up at the beginning of the Masters broadcast on CBS. So I had my VCR all set up, and sure enough, there's the commercial. Sure enough, there's me driving the car, but there's nobody in the back seat. And they had digitally removed whoever was sitting. They thought they digitally removed me from the back seat of the car, but they had taken out D. David, who they made the deal with. So I'm sitting there with these guys kind of in the crosshairs.
Yeah.
Called my agent, explained what had happened. Anyway, to make a long story short, we made a deal. They didn't want to go after him hard because they still needed to do business, the agency, with this advertising agency. Anyway, it was an interesting commercial. That thing, for a couple of days' work, paid an awful lot of money. So thank you, Avis. And there were other spots as well, dog food and things like that. But that, as I said, it was a good way to if you could book some commercials to have money coming in and pretty much cover your rent and your expenses while you waited for bigger projects, whether it was a TV or a film.
Yeah.
A job that came along.
It's crazy show business. It really is.
Yeah. Yep.
So how do you get cast in First Blood?
Well, Brian Dennehy and I and Mike Talbot, who I mentioned, who's in Miami Vice, we all shared an apartment in West Hollywood.
Really?
Three of us. Yep. And it was on, doesn't matter. It was in West Hollywood. So Brian and Mike, Brian got Mike Talbot a part in First Blood. He played the sheriff. He played one of their deputies. And when you shoot in Canada, there is a limit to the number of American actors that you can have because movie companies and production companies want to shoot in Canada because there's a really great tax break. So they were limited to how many Americans they could bring up. So they had cast Bulky, who's a good pal.
Oh, yeah.
Russo, good pal.
Yeah.
Albert, good pal, roommate. Dennehy. Ted Kochif, who directed, I believe, is, I believe he's Canadian.
Yes, he is.
Because that's what you need. And then, and of course, then Stallone.
Right.
So there was a limit on how many actors you could bring up. So, and the part that I had was really a couple of sentences in the script. Albert's part was big, Bulky's big, Caruso's big. That was a good gig. They were going to be up there for a while, and that was a good gig. The part of Lieutenant Clinton Morgan literally was a couple of lines. Yeah. So the guy who was supposed to play the Canadian guy bails at the last minute because his wife's pregnant and going into labor or something like that. So then he says to Kochif, look, I've got a guy who could do this. We'll bring stock up. I'm in a gym, working out, and I get a phone call over the loudspeaker, please come to the front desk. I'm thinking, oh, great, who died? And it's my manager's secretary saying, you're flying up tonight to Vancouver. You're going to be in First Blood, and I have faxed to your house the signs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I race home. I get dressed. I get to the airport. I fly up, and I'm looking at the signs. On the way up, I'm trying to expand this part, and I think I have some pretty interesting ideas. So I'm writing this stuff in the margin. I get up to the hotel room at night,
Mm-hmm.
and he takes me over to meet Ted Kochif. Hey, great, thanks, great. Ted says, yeah, you'll be great, fine. I said, Ted, I don't know, but I had some ideas about this if you wanted to take a look at this. Anyway, a lot of that stuff that ended up in the film, I brought to the role. Ted was anxious to expand that because he felt at that moment in the movie there was going to need to be some comic relief to let the air out of the tires, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Tension was building, let a little air out, and then build it back up. This is what happened. So that part became a lot more substantial. Thankfully, I was very fortunate that way. But that's how I got that. Brian said, I know a guy, and they kind of brought me up because the guy who was supposed to do it dropped out at the last minute.
That's great. I heard that Dennehy was a very generous guy, and you actually did like 3 movies with him, FX and The Last of the Finest as well.
I did that, and then I tried to return the favor by putting him in 2 movies that I produced. Welcome to Paradise and Cat City.
Nice. Yeah. He was one of the greats. I don't think that he got his due, but he was great, Dennehy.
He really was, and you're right when you say that he was generous. He absolutely was very, very generous, and always had time for people, especially young people trying to navigate. We spent a lot of time together, and he was kind of a little hobbled towards the end of his life. He had bad knees, and he was a big guy, and very sad to see him go, but had a wonderful life and a wonderful career. That's for sure.
Yeah. So how was
we went?
mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask you. So what was Ted Kochif like as a director? Because I heard he could be a madman at times.
You heard he could be a what at times?
A madman at times.
Huh. Well, my experience was nothing but great. I know he and Brian were very close. I don't know what kind of relationship he had with Sly. I don't know, but I think he knows his craft, and I think he's a good director. And unfortunately, like a lot of people in Hollywood, to be a certain age, and people forget that you know how to do things.
Yeah.
I just had this conversation the other day about this need to always have somebody younger. And I think I have the story correct that Phil Hoffman, again, can't remember the name of the movie, something with the devil. He did. Sidney Lumet ended up directing it.
Huh.
And Phil Hoffman said, look, I'm not doing this movie unless Sidney Lumet, on the waterfront, Oscar winner, directs it. And Sidney, I think, was about 85 or 88 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, nobody in Hollywood wants that. God forbid you had somebody who is the right age. So there's a lot of great talent that continually gets overlooked and bypassed because of ageism. And it might have been an issue for Ted as well. I don't know. He did those movies in the 80s, but I'm not quite sure. I didn't keep up with his career, kind of what he did after that. But
yeah.
But for me, my experience with him was fantastic.
Were you surprised when this? Yeah. Were you surprised when this movie became a franchise? With the Rambo movies and all of that. Well,
yes and no. I think what Stallone has managed to do to carve out this career based on two characters, both beginning with the letter R, pretty remarkable. I don't know if that's ever been done before.
Yeah.
But the fact that he has been able to create these characters that could sustain these sequels, I mean, it's pretty remarkable. And so I'm actually going up to Hope, British Columbia, in October. There's a celebration up there. They've invited me up for the 40th anniversary of the filming of First Blood. Now, half of that movie was filmed in this little town called Hope. The other half was filmed in the National Forest, right there, outside of Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
That's where my stuff was done. But a guy reached out to me to be friends on Facebook, and I said, yeah, sure, whatever. And because he was a huge fan of the movie, and in fact, there's a whole group of these people who are like devoted to this particular version, the first one.
Yeah.
They feel like this was the best one.
I agree.
And a number of people say that. It's a different kind of movie than the other ones were. I mean, in First Blood, one guy gets killed. That's because he falls out of a helicopter. And Rambo 2, I don't know, what's the body count? 4,000? I mean, they switch to everybody was going to get wiped out. And I think it's a much more kind of thoughtful movie. It was based on a book, and I think people seem to really respond to that first one. So I guess I'm not surprised that it became a franchise, but it's certainly different than all the other Rambo movies.
It is. It's more dramatic. It's more of a character piece. It has a message, a commentary. Yeah. It's a masterpiece, I think.
Yeah, we'll see if it happens, supposedly doing what's called, I hadn't heard this term before, it's called a film, a fan film.
Oh, yeah.
Short movie. I've never heard of these things. So a guy reached out to me and asked if I would be in this thing with Eric Roberts and Kevin Sorbo, and it takes place in Vietnam and sets up what happens in Vietnam before Rambo walks into this town in, supposed to be Washington, I guess the state of Washington, where he meets Dennehy on the bridge. And so, I don't know, we'll see if that actually happens, but if I'm, I'm a part of it. But, First Blood lives on.
Yeah.
Can't get enough of it.
You guest starred on Matt Houston. Do you remember anything about that?
I thought it was a funny story.
Mm-hmm.
The guy I had my scenes with, along with Matt Houston, was William Shallard.
Yeah.
And he used to be, he was Patty Duke's dad in that show, which we loved. But he was also the president of the Screen Actors Guild for a while. And we're doing a scene, and it was supposed to be where, I think we're in a church, I think that's where I was, or somewhere. And we have this scene with Matt Houston and George Segaris. And then Charlotte and I are supposed to go off to the side somewhere, and then come back on while the camera's still rolling. So we do our scene, we walk off, and we're waiting, and I'm thinking, okay, we're just going to wait for our cue to go back on. But William Shallard, God bless him, consummate actor, he's still in character as we're off. And he says to me, what do you think's going to happen with Houston? Like, it's a continuation. It's not our scene, but he's improvising a scene for us to stay in character so that we go back on in character. Does that make sense? Have I confused you?
No. It makes perfect sense.
Okay. It was interesting to me and kind of funny to me, but I quickly went along, and we we improvised some lines, and then we went back on to finish our scene. But that's what I remember. That and to be in a scene with Bernardo from the original West Side Story.
Oh, George Shakiris.
Yep, that was pretty cool.
That is cool.
It was very cool.
How about guest starring on Hunter?
Yeah. Hunter was that was fun. I think I did a couple of those. Unfortunately for Fred Dreyer, one of the scenes called for him to knock me out as a deputy and be in a chair where he had to pick me up and carry me. So I felt bad for him at the time because I think I was about 200 pounds at the time. But he was a big guy. He could handle that one.
Yeah. All those Stephen J. Cannell series were great. You know, he was a great writer.
Yep. Yeah, that guy, he put out a lot of good stuff. I remember reading his book and being very impressed by his discipline and just how he handled his career. But he put a lot of people to work.
How about Crime Wave?
Well, at the time, I didn't know Sam Raimi was going to be Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
And that was pretty interesting. I remember that was done at some soundstage, because they needed a jail. And I remember it was like off of Slauson Avenue somewhere in L.A.
Mm-hmm.
But he became a big deal, right?
Yeah.
What has Sam Raimi done lately? Is he? I don't know what he's doing lately. But he was a pretty big deal for a long time. But he was brand new when he did Crime Wave.
Yeah, I haven't seen him do anything lately, but he was doing the Spider-Man trilogy in the 2000s, and then he was going to do, at one point, he was going to direct the Wizard of Oz movie that Tim Burton ended up doing, and then something came out. I don't know. I'll check it out though. See what he's doing lately. But yeah, Crime.
I was impressed with Sam. Go ahead.
I was gonna say Crime Wave is a crazy movie though. It's finally a cult classic. At the time, everyone hated it.
Is it around? Did you see? I mean, is that viewable?
Yeah, I mean, it's on YouTube. I don't think it's on Blu-ray or anything like that. I think it ran into some legal issues or something over distribution.
I'll look that up.
Yeah, or something like that. But yeah, it's starting to become a cult classic now.
Good. I was going to say I was always impressed with Sam because he would show up at the set in a coat and tie. That's how he directed. And I thought that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if that still is his MO, but I thought that was a neat way to distinguish yourself. Kind of like Hitchcock.
Absolutely, and he has a cameo in his movies like Hitchcock does a cameo in his movies.
Yeah.
So how was making FX?
Well, that was a lot of fun. That was, of course, Brian's doing as well. He brought me in to meet the director in New York. I was in New York at the time, and because I would go back and forth quite often, still do. But in the acting world, there seem to be seasons. So you don't want to be in New York in January. Pilot season's out here. It gets a little warmer. Production picks up back there. I mean, back then, pardon me, there were no sound stages, so to speak. I think there was something in Astoria, Queens, but Silver Studios, but not like there is here, or not like there is today.
Yeah.
So when you basically in New York, you're doing a lot of exteriors, or you're getting locations to work in. So I was back there at the time, and Brian was there, and they were auditioning for the role, and I was able to get that, and that was a lot of fun. It was fun to work with Brian. I got a picture of the two of us outside a car looking at a helicopter, still from the shoot that I have and enjoy. So, yeah, that was all of that fun. But any time you get to work like that, it's such a treat, such a privilege. You feel so grateful for the opportunity. I never understand bad behavior on a set. I never understand actors who have just been given this gift and squander it with bad behavior or attitudes or feeling like they're more important than Jonah's song.
Yeah.
Somebody who cures cancer. I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And again, that was one of the great things about Brian. He never caught to that. I mean, he might have been difficult if you were dragging your feet, and he wanted to be somewhere else. But in terms of throwing his weight around and being obnoxious, like you hear these horror stories of bad behavior on sets, and it's just like I never understood it. I just never understood it. I mean, if you got a job on a movie, you're one of the luckiest people in the world. So shut up, do your work, and be grateful.
I agree.
Unfortunately, a lot of jerks in the business.
There are. There absolutely are. I've dealt with some. So.
Yeah, tell me about you.
Well, I mean, like lately, trying to, book people for the show, I get people who say, "Oh, sure, I'm interested. Get back to me on this day." And when I do, they're like, "I don't think I can contribute anything to your podcast, but thanks for your interest." It's like, couldn't you just tell me, right from the get go that instead of placating me,
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
I don't understand it,
but but you've been doing this for a while, though, right?
5 years.
Wow. That's pre-podcast.
5 years, yeah. I mean, the average life of a podcaster is like 6 months, and like I thought I was gonna do 10 interviews and then stop, and then just kept going because I kept getting luckier and luckier, and I moved to this town where there's nothing to do and it's impossible to make friends here. So this is all I've been doing the last 5 years, and the pandemic has really made me bored of it now that the world is starting to open up. I want to do things, and I eventually want to move out of this town, and it's on the horizon though.
Well, what town are you in?
Redding, California.
I don't know where that is.
It's
central.
It's north. It's between San Francisco and Sacramento.
Ah, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's kind of a
Never heard of.
it's kind of a rural town. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, that. If it's not lumber and timber, it's agriculture up there, I would think, right?
Yeah, it's farm areas and small city life. There's like very little entertainment venues over here. They have like a ton of casinos here, but that's about it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, you'll get on the road someday soon.
Yeah, we shall see.
You'll make that your mission. Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not getting any older. I'm going to be 39 this year, and it's just like I'm questioning my mortality every day.
Well, you got plenty of time left.
Yeah.
I love what you're doing. How does somebody find your podcast?
It's on YouTube, strictly on YouTube.
So, if somebody wanted to listen to this particular episode, I would say, here's what you do.
Tom,
YouTube, you look up Kovac, and
you
interesting names that you want to listen to. But that's what you would do and listen. And it's just strictly audio, correct?
Strictly audio, yeah. You just type in my name, Tommy Kovac, or Splat from the Past, the name of the show, and it's there. My whole channel with all my videos, it's there.
Okay, cool.
So really quickly, I was curious. So you left the business, but then you came back and you started writing and producing.
Yeah, I took about 10 years. I had a family. Sadly, got divorced in that, but that's life. But I ended up getting into the world of the internet very early on, and I sold the first ad on Yahoo in 1995. So at the time, Yahoo was what Google is today or Amazon is today. That's the big giant in the room. So in about 2000, I was absolutely burnt out, but because I had worked for Yahoo in the boom time,
Mm-hmm.
I left there with some money and decided, after taking some time off, thinking, what do I want to do? I said, I've always loved the entertainment industry. Now I can afford to be in it. So I had a friend who was the director of operations at Sony, and I got an office, first at the Kovac studios and then an office on the Sony lot, and opened up a production company called Out of Pocket Films. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to, I didn't want to wait for the phone to ring as an actor. If somebody wanted to give me a job, great. But I said, I'm not going to audition.
Yeah.
Humiliating. No, forget that. And so I kind of hung out a shingle. I did a short film with some friends called Hiding in Walls that had Jim Rash from Community and way, way, way back, Jane Lynch,
Oh, yeah.
Danny Terrio from Bad Fever. Why am I spacing on Danny's last name? Danny, from Machete.
Huh. Oh, Denny Trio, that's right.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And that was a short film, and that kind of got me started and kind of learned, because there's a whole lot to movie making that as an actor, you're just not aware of. You show up, you do your work.
Yeah.
Maybe at the end of post-production, you go in for ADR, and then you go to the screening, hopefully. But that's about it. But there's so much that goes into producing a movie, pre-production, production, post, and then the hard part, the marketing of it, the selling of it. So doing a short film really got my feet wet, and then I started optioning some properties that, scripts and ideas that I thought, these are movies that I would like to see, these are movies that I would like to make. And at the time, the model for independent filmmaking was you went out, you raised the money, you shot the movie, and then you sold it. And then you recouped the money, not theatrically, because it was a coin flip as to whether or not you'd get theatrical release, but invariably you'd get a DVD deal, because DVDs were king, and distributors were printing money. The cost of making a DVD was so cheap that they were selling them for good money, and that was the model, that you would raise the money, you'd make the movie, you'd get it into a distributor's hands, and you'd make your money back that way. So that was the model. What I realized was it wasn't a very good model, because the distribution business is pretty cutthroat.
Yeah. And
movies that are supposed to make profit on the books oftentimes don't make a profit. For example, who James Garner for the Rockford Files.
Oh, yeah.
Sued Universal or whoever was doing that because of residuals. Well, sorry, Jim, the show's not in profit. Are you kidding me? Of course it is. And there were other movies that people challenged as well, saying, how can it make $300 million worldwide, and you tell them that it only costs $5 million to make? How is this not in profit? But that's the nature of the business. There's a great book called Hollywood Economics by Jay Epstein. And it really lays out just how ruthless distribution is.
Yeah.
So if you're somebody that is counting on being a net participant, not gross dollars, but net dollars. Net dollars are the dollars that are there when everybody else has been paid and all of the expenses have been paid. But when it costs $800 to make a film for distribution to put into a theater, that's what it would cost for a screener, or not a screener, but a film to be shown at AMC. for a projectionist to put in $35 million, about $800. But typically, your production company would be charged $8,500 for that print.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do a movie and there are 500 prints out there because the 500 theaters around the country showing your thing, that's how much money has been charged. 500 times 8,500 has been charged against the production. That all needs to get paid off before you see a nickel.
Right.
Now, I know I'm getting into the weeds here, and I don't want to do that.
It's okay.
But the economics of distribution are not for the faint of heart, I can tell you that. So my goal was to make movies and to try to make some money doing it so that I could continue to make movies, because if you go to investors and you don't make their money back at least, it's hard to go back to them for a second time. So
yeah.
And now with streaming, independent filmmaking is ostensibly gone.
Yeah.
The only movies that are getting theatrical releases, and theatrical releases now, those are lost leaders. It costs a lot of money to market them, and the theater owners take half of the box office, but they're there to try to establish credibility and awareness. And it used to be it would go into DVD, and that's where everybody made their money.
Yep.
Now they're going into streaming, and they're just not making the kind of money that they used to make. And now the platforms are making their own movies, or they're only taking the big blockbusters. Very difficult for a small movie, unless you've got a real pedigree. Unless you've got real... what's the thing that Francis McDormand did? But I think Netflix did that, if I'm not mistaken.
Huh.
Nomadland. I think Netflix did that. But
I don't
you
know.
look at some of these other movies that are out there, unless they're big blockbusters, and people throw a lot of money at a theatrical run, with a lot of money in what's called P&A, prints and advertising, marketing dollars. Very tough to get on these streaming platforms. Very tough.
I know. There's a lot of stuff that's getting, that's having trouble getting distributed is politically incorrect stuff. It's like everyone's afraid of offending people now.
True. Yep. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Heard a very interesting thing on NPR. Terry Gross did the thing on Fresh Air about studios here catering to China. And it used to be that China, biggest market in the world, would not take American films.
Right.
And then eventually they would take American films if the studios would adhere to certain criteria. And if you saw the list of things that could not be shown in your movie, it'd be crazy. They talked about one movie where there was a scene in and it's a popular movie. I can't remember what it is right now. Might have been Blade Runner.
Oh, yeah. Love that movie.
There's a scene that takes place in Shanghai.
Mm-hmm.
But the camera goes to a neighborhood where there's laundry hanging from clotheslines from, a building, an apartment building. Well, the Chinese government said you had to take that out because that shows China in a bad light. Laundry hanging from a building.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that kind of catering with the hoops that they had to go through. But now China has gotten tired of American movies, and they're making their own. And the Chinese people would rather see Chinese people in these movies rather than American people. Actors. So the economics of the movie business, it's called show business
right.
for a reason. It is an absolute business. And I'm convinced that the powers that be who make decisions about business, I don't think they care if it's a movie or if it's a dining room set or, if it's landscaping material. It doesn't matter. They're selling. Selling. And this happens to be movies. And they'll do whatever it takes to sell. And I think the art, for a large part, is being kicked to the curb. The movies that people like Cassavetes used to make, or Dennis Hopper used to make, or the great independent filmmakers that popped up in the 70s and the 80s, and
Bob
Now,
Rafelson, Henry Jaglom, all those guys.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Or Jim Jarvis. I mean,
Yeah.
all those guys. I mean, there's no room for that anymore because ultimately it costs money, and the people that think in order to make money, it's got to have certain criteria. I mean, if you look at Sundance, which was the first buying festival, a big festival where people go to actually buy movies. That's the first one up in January. And from what I understand, this year, not maybe this year, before the pandemic, I think there were 13,000 films submitted for consideration. Now, that included shorts, documentaries, features, and foreign. But 13,000 films. From what I understand, in 2019, they selected for the program, for the Sundance Film Festival, there were 150 films chosen. I have no idea what would be the average budget of a movie that was submitted to Sundance. I have no idea. Some big, some studio backed, some maybe shot for $50,000. Who knows? But I'm just gonna take a guess and say $500,000. I don't know. Maybe that's too much. 250. But I can't do the math. But if you were to multiply $250,000
right
times 33,000 or 13,000 submissions, you're going to come up with a big number. That's the number of money spent on movies just submitting.
Right.
My point was that there's an awful lot of money that goes into this, yet there are only 150 films that were presented at Sundance, and probably 20, maybe 30, found distribution deals.
Yeah.
So it's a very expensive game to get involved in. There just really isn't an opportunity for a lot of these great pieces of art, great movies, whether they're shorts, whether they're foreign, whether they're documentary, to be seen. So, I mean, it's too bad, but that's the nature of the business. That's the business.
Unfortunately.
Business will always rule the kingdom. So.
Yeah. Well, last thing I want to ask you is, aside from that show that you mentioned earlier with Phyllis, do you have any other upcoming projects?
Well, maybe if this little fan film happens, that would be fun. My brother and I, Tim, we've got a couple of projects we're trying to put together that involve golf. My business partner, Brent Huff, we've done a Column 3 project together, 2 features and a documentary. Always kind of looking for other projects, but frankly, going out to find the money, it's become really, really difficult. And I just sort of, it takes a lot of energy. So this thing that I'm doing, it's called the Hollywood Story. It's basically the Moth Radio Hour, but instead of a shotgun approach of all these different topics, it's people who have been in the business that get up and tell a 5 or 7 minute story and experience that they've had. And it's not just actors, it's teamsters, set designers, craft service, agent, people that are living out in the old folks' home. Not the old folks' home. Anyway, so the film house where retired people can live. I can't remember the name of it. Or young people just getting off the bus. So it's really a focus on experiences for people who've been in the trenches of Hollywood. My goal is to try to sell that as a radio broadcast. I love radio, to syndicate it for NPR.
Yeah. And
then also have that as a podcast. And if that works well, I also want to do the Broadway stories and do that in New York, where people like Nathan and Ernie Sabella and people like that who have been in the business in Broadway. That might be a little bit more actor performer centric, but that's that's what's taking the lead for me right now. That's what I'm focusing on.
Well, I hope you get all of that done, Patrick, and I want to thank you so much for coming on today. Yes.
My pleasure. Thank you for reaching out, and I appreciate the invitation. And good luck with your show, and keep at it. And you'll get out of Reading someday. You'll get to Hollywood. And, maybe we'll have a cup of coffee.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, I mean, I go to LA at least once or twice a year. Next time I go, I'll let you know and stuff.
Yeah, see if we can figure it out. That'd be good.
Awesome. Well,
well, good luck to you. I had fun. I appreciated your time, and this was a fun experience. So good luck with the show, and I wish you well in the future.
Thank you, sir. You have a great night over there, and please be safe.
You bet. You too.
Okay. Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Patrick Stack. Ain't he a cool dude? Oh, what a nice guy, hon. Great stories there. That's great he's still friends with Nathan Lane, Nathan Lane's one of the biggest stars in the world. That's good that their friendship has sustained over time. And Patrick, in my eyes, is also a very big star. Well, until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes.